Hey everybody, this is Tao at The Forge, and today I want to talk to you guys about the new Duel Deck that's come out, Merfolk versus Goblins. Now, one of the things that I like to point to is the fact that a lot of these pre-constructed decks are not really good for new players, especially intro decks. I really don't like intro decks for new players. And a lot of people actually recommend them, and I've even heard at my LGS, like new players come in and like the guys there, and they're great guys, but they'll say like, why don't you try an intro deck? Now, my issue with intro decks is that they're good and they're competitive against each other, and they introduce people to the game, but then later on you're pretty much left with a bunch of valueless cards. Like they're rarely ever worth anything later. Now, many of the dual decks are actually the same way. Like if you get some of the other ones, they're not really that good like later on, and you can't really mod them into anything competitive later. Which brings me to Merfolk versus Goblins, and I was actually super excited about this, and I really like it, and here's why. First of all, you can mod it. Right, so you can modify this and you can start building towards an actual modern deck, and it wouldn't actually take too much to make them. Like a normal modern deck, is going to cost you several $100s, but this at least gives you kind of a starting point to go with it. So like with Merfolk, you get your Tidebinder Mage, your Master of the Pearl Trident, your Harbinger of Tides. You end up with what else is there? Miro Ray and stuff like that. And so it's actually a good place to start. And there's actually some really good cards with it. In Goblins, it's the same thing. You get your Glory Chaser, your Foundry Street Denizen, your Warren Instigator, and a few other things like that, like the Goblin Chieftain, and you even get your Goblin Grenades. Right, so well, at least not a full playset of them, but at least you get one of them. So like they're actually good starting decks to build these tribal decks out of. And if you're in for a new player, this is something that you can play. It's competitive against other people's decks. It would probably crush an intro deck, and it's about the same price or cheaper. Right now, the going price of this is $25 in Canada, where I live, or $20 in the US. That's about the same basically after conversion. And when you look at an intro deck, it's basically like half the price of that. So but you're getting two decks. So I would say this actually is a really good opportunity for people who are new to Magic to try and get into Modern and to try out the game. Right, and the thing is, if you like it, then you're not going to be disappointed, and there's actually something pretty cool that you can do. What I suggested to some of the players that I know that are new to the game is having them, they were like, oh, we should go buy this, and I was like, well, if you're actually going to go buy it, what you should do is partner up with someone else who's also going to go buy it, right? And then what you can do is you each buy one, and you choose Merfolk or Goblins, right? And then you just basically choose, each person gives the other person the other half. So if you choose Merfolk, then your buddy gives you all his Merfolk cards, and then he would keep all the Goblin cards, right? And that way, a lot of these things, they don't really have that much consistency because you only have ones or two ofs in them. But in this way, you can actually get twos and threes and four ofs and things. Well, I guess no threes, just twos and four ofs in a lot of these cards. And that way, your deck will be more consistent, it'll be more powerful, and when you want to upgrade it to the better, to the full modern version, then you're almost halfway there, right? So having one Miro Ray is nice, but having two is even better, right? Same thing goes with Warren Instigator and stuff like that, and then after that, it's, if the person has a few bucks here and there, they can buy the Lord of Atlantis or stuff like that. And, eventually they're going to need Aether Vials or other expensive cards like Pile Drivers or Goblin Guides or things like that. But those can come in later. It's not really necessary for people to get them right away. The deck will be competitive, and also, you get something that you can even play and upgrade. It gives you something to work towards. Now, a lot of people, the thing that they like about Magic the Gathering is deck construction and upgrading. One of the people who I got into Magic the Gathering recently, she says one of her favorite things is just spreading out her cards, or and looking at them and seeing what can match and what can go, and then looking at the Gatherer and or checking out the Ixalan card spoilers and seeing what might go better in their deck. and that's just one of their favorite things to do. With this, that gives the person the opportunity to do it, like where they can spread out these cards, go on, look for different goblins or look for different merfolk and say, hey, I think this might actually be really good. And then gives them a chance to engage in trading if they ever go to draft and they get a good card, but maybe it's a card that they don't really need. Like one of my acquaintances that actually recently said that they had pulled like a foil locust god, and they were like, well, I could sell that and get something else. Well, for that, you could actually get a couple Aether Vials and go into Merfolk, and really start building towards like, the actual Merfolk tribal deck. Right, so I would say that this is actually a really, really good opportunity for new players to get into the game, especially into Modern for a relatively low price. The prices are going to drop on these things, and there's actually, I think, a Miro Regiray that's going to be coming out as a promo card in January. So I think that's at the Magic Open House, I've heard. So if that's the case, I mean, like, my goodness, like you can get a tremendous value on this. So I'd say if you're new to the game and you're interested in getting this, you guys should go out, get a partner, each person get one, and then put it together like that. And and that way you can put together a decent deck and have something to work with to play Magic the Gathering. Now, of course, for people who already have maybe these decks, like I actually have full Goblin Tribal and full Merfolk Tribal in paper. It's still actually worthwhile, I guess, if if you're interested, to get the alternate art stuff and things like that. So I mean, like there's alternate art cards, and if you like them, then you can put them in there. If that's your bag. If not, then this deck maybe isn't the right one for you. Now, one of the things is that because I'm basically a dad, it's sometimes hard for me to find other people to play Magic the Gathering. Like very few of my friends actually play this. So I have to kind of get people into the game. And one of the things I've said about getting people into the game is like give them a deck, right? Like, if you want someone to play the game, give them a deck so that they can actually play the game. And it becomes something of theirs. It's actually something I learned when I was working in retail, is that when you greet someone is you actually, a good way to sell someone something is to hand it to them, because then they feel like they own it and they're like less likely to put it down, and they want to actually buy it once they have it in their hand. Now, kind of the same thing here is that when you give someone a deck, they own it, right? It's theirs. It's kind of their baby, and then they'll get interested in it, and and that way you can get people into Magic the Gathering, and they're more likely to play it because they have something, and they're not just borrowing decks all the time. They get used to their deck, they learn how it plays, and it's just better. So if you're like me and you have to make players in a way, like get people interested all the time to play, then what you can do is buy this. And it's like, $25 is like $12.50 per person. You can give one to one person, one to another person. Boom, you got two friends to play with, right? So, or two friends that, that maybe not have been interested in Magic the Gathering, but now are, because they actually have decent decks to play with. So, anyways, that's my thoughts on Merfolk versus Goblins. I think it's tremendous value. If you're buying it just to gain money and sell the cards, then that's probably not going to work, because they usually overprint these, and so the value of these cards is going to drop tremendously unless you sell them just immediately. So I wouldn't actually hold on to them for value. But if you're looking for collector cards, or if you're looking to get people into the game, or you're looking to get into the game yourself and you don't have a lot of cards, I think this is a great product for you to get into. Anyways, that's my thoughts for the day. If you have any questions or if you have any comments on this, throw it into the comment section. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.